Hi readers, welcome back to my channel. Lila Wanders and Reads, Lee here, and welcome to my August reading recap. As always, I won't read the blurbs on what these books were about. I read 14 this month and finished one audiobook, but I will tell you my initial thoughts and, like I said, how I felt about them. This month had its highs and lows. I started out doing a Booker long list reading project, and I quit probably halfway through the month when I had a DNF, and it just really derailed me. I still have over on the floor over there several of the long lists left, but we're only 2 weeks away from the shortlist being announced, so I think I may not read any more of that long list until the short list comes out, but we'll see. Anywho, so I started the month with the Booker Prize project, and that is Audition by Katie Kitamura. I actually really liked this book. I felt like I was on the verge of kind of getting what it was about. There's a switch in here. So there's this. It starts with a woman having coffee or something with a young man at a cafe, and then midway it switches and you get a whole other perspective on it, and it feels like almost like a play, and so I really enjoyed it. But I went into this book having read a lot about it and trying to be open about the Booker Prize books. And I was until the one DNF, and I don't remember where in here I DNF'd it. But after that, I needed something light and fluffy, so I went with Emily Henry's Funny Story, and this is aptly named. Aptly named. I laughed so much. There are 2 tabs in here, and that is not the only times I laughed, but I laughed so much throughout this book that you'll see later, this ended up being a month of Emily Henry. Not 100%, but 3 books by her in a month, and that's a lot for me in 1 month by the same author. So I loved this. Of the books that I read, this is probably my favorite just because it kept me laughing. Gotta make some adjustments here. Next up, I went back to the Booker Prize and read Claire Adams' Love Forms. I liked this a little bit less than Audition. I felt it was a quiet book, and it ended up without an answer, and I said, well, that's okay. I said I loved this book. I did like it a lot. I think I liked it less than Audition. When I think about Audition and how clever it was, I tend to remember liking that more. This was just a quiet book, and it's about a woman who's given up a child when she was 16. That's all I'm going to say for it. Interested to see if this makes the long list. Next up, I went in a completely different direction, and my hairstylist had told me about Jim Butcher's The Aeronaut's Windlass, #1 in the Cinder Spires. I read this, thoroughly enjoyed it. It is a different kind of fantasy to me. It seemed kind of like steampunk fantasy because they had flying ships that I envisioned because of the cover, as though they were pirate ships. So really enjoyed this. Don't know when I'm going to get to the second book in the series, but we'll see. I feel like I'm ready for it to be fall, kind of gray days, chilly days, and I feel like this would be perfect for a fall day. However, we're on summer's making a comeback here today when I'm recording this. The high is supposed to be 97, and we had a whole week, and especially Labor Day weekend, with perfect temperatures. Not too hot, not too cold, not too humid. Anywho, next up, this one I ended up liking in spite of myself. And the reason that I didn't want to like for a long time Ben Markovitz's The Rest of Our Lives is because it felt like white man angst, and in the middle of him running away from his problems, But really, I think that it ended up being a love letter to his wife who had cheated on him years ago, and kind of him figuring his shit out and whether he wants to stay or go, because he promised himself that he'd go once their daughter went to college. And so I ended up liking it in spite of myself. It took a turn I wasn't expecting, and we'll see where it lands, or if it lands, on the short list. After that, I had to go back to Emily Henry, and I read Beach Read. This one was okay to me. It was not as funny as Funny Story. I liked it. I have a friend who really liked it and thinks it's better than the next one I'm going to read. But for me, the next one ended up just hitting me in the right spot at the right time. Beach Read was just okay for me. One thing I've noticed in modern romance, in the romances I used to read when I was a teenager, there was a lot of historical romances, so there's always, women getting kidnapped or stuff like that, which is kind of like fantasy because that doesn't normally happen to somebody. You don't travel back in time and get captured by a Scottish prince every day. So in modern romances, they talk about modern traumas, and that shocked me when I first started seeing that. Now I've gotten accustomed to it. It just makes it, I like it when it's funny. I like it when it's funny. I love me a rom-com. Beach Read had its funny moments, but again, it was just okay for me. It was a good palate cleanser. Next, I read The South by Tash Ah, also on the Booker long list. I'd reached out to another YouTuber several weeks back, or right before I started reading it, and asked him his opinion. He said, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I would not go, unless I have some compelling reason, when he comes out with the next installation. This is supposed to be 4 novels. I won't seek it out. It's the kind of a coming-of-age tale of a young boy and his family and their own kind of coming to terms with a transition period in life. One thing that made me uncomfortable is, so they go to the South, and the housekeeper, the groundskeeper, and the young main character's father share a father, different mothers. So the main character begins an affair with the groundskeeper's son, and I think that means they're cousins, so that kind of icked me out a little bit. Anywho, but overall, I still thought it was beautifully written. It was fine. The one book on the Booker list that I actually didn't do a palate cleanser between, I don't think, and I keep thinking about it, is Benjamin Wood's Seascraper. Just the atmosphere that Benjamin Wood, it felt a little slow for me, but everything fed the atmosphere he was creating. And that's what I will remember about this book. It made me feel, even though it was high summer when I was reading this, it made me feel like foggy and gray, and there were 2 twists in this I did not expect, and it ends with hope, which I really liked. So, on the audiobook side, I've not been that great so far in September. I started an audiobook at the end of August, and I just paused it for a week and been listening to college sports on the radio. So, but in August, I finally finished The Third Reich at War by Richard J. Evans. Highly recommend. Love this book. This is the third and final book in a trilogy about the Third Reich. The first one is The Third Reich in Power. I've misplaced the second book, so now I'm not sure. Shit, my alarm's about to go off. Timer. Anyway, now I don't know what the other 2 books are. Anyway, not the point. Finish this. So in a minute, you're going to start hearing my timer go off. Sorry about that. I don't want to get up and go. Next, I went with an old book. reread Don't Look at and It Won't Hurt by Richard Peck. I love to do these rereads of these books. This was written in like 1974, copyright 1972, so just a couple of years after I was born. So these books are always way darker than the stuff I read now, but I don't read a whole lot of YA. It's different, but there's a whole dark theme in the books from the 70s and 80s that just, I don't think are present in the same way. This is about a young girl whose sister has an unplanned pregnancy. Vietnam War is mentioned in here quite a bit. Moms for Liberty would hate it, so that's a win in my book. Oof. And then, I'm sad to say that last month Greg Iles passed away. I had been a huge fan of his books, and I have a stack of books by him that I've had. Some of them I know they were mine and I read. Others, like Blood Memory, I think that my mom had purchased and she sent them to me when she moved all what I had, my stuff up here. I think she moved some of her books as well. Anyway, maybe I was misremembering Greg Iles. Maybe 25 years ago when I was reading him, I was in a different place, but this was just, it just smacked of stereotypes to me. The overly emotional heroine, stereotypes about black people, a serial killer that was not believable to me. Like this girl, this woman, but I say girl because she acted like one. Every time she was confronted with some truth, she and physically ran away. So it was just so frustrating to me. Big no. But then I entered the sourdough universe of Angela Slater with All the Murmuring Bones. And this felt so cozy to me. Pacing was an issue for me. It's more like a hero's journey story where you travel along with her and see her growth until the end. So it was not very fast-paced, but I can't wait to read the next in this universe. But after that, I went back to Emily Henry with Great Big Beautiful Life. And my friend read this, and I think I know she gave it a lower rating than I, but for me, this one just hit. Okay. Insta-love, which normally annoys me, but I let it slide because I think I just liked the female main character much more than I did in other books. But I liked her. I had a good time. I liked unraveling the mystery with the two of them, and it was a great palate cleanser. Next up, so I've been reading fall books, even though it's not. It's my longing for fall. And I went with The Lighthouse Witches by C.J. Cook, and I really can't wait to read something else by her. Again, I'm going to wait until the weather cools off. Probably. I've lost the book I plan to read next. Where did it go? Not the point. Anywho, The Lighthouse Witches has a really unique twist that I didn't see coming, and I just loved it. I can't tell you what it is because it'll spoil it, but in this one, two sisters go missing on a remote Scottish island where their mom has been sent to paint a mural in this lighthouse. The mural is important, you don't know why until later. And then 20 years later, one of the girls is found, but she's still the same age that she was when she disappeared. So the third sister goes and gets her, and then it's timeline switching from back in, I don't know, I don't remember the year, and then 20 years later in the present. And I loved that, loved the mystery, loved the suspense at the end, and it ended up wrapping up nicely for me. Finally, a book that I had been looking forward to, and I'm actually going to send to a friend, but it just wasn't what I expected, or I think that this isn't a thriller. However, it's kind of a mystery. And I say it's not a thriller because it wasn't really thrilling. It's more of a mystery. But it kind of dragged for me. High season, rich girl gets killed. Somebody goes, a young girl, local girl goes to jail, and then she gets out of prison. And then gets out of prison years later, 10 some odd years later, and returns. And then there's a documentary involved. All these things that I thought I would like, but it just was okay to me. And I think I've gotten out of the mystery / thriller where they're just not doing it for me like they used to in my 20s when that's almost all I read. Anywho, I have lost the book I plan to read next. Oh, I found it. It's over on there on the floor. Anywho, not the point. So, before the timer bugs me or you any longer, I'm wrapping this up. It was a decent reading month. September has not started off well at all. 2 books that were they're both kind of duds for me. One, I think I gave 3 stars, and the other I rounded down to 2.5. So I'm hopeful on my next book that it'll be better. Anywho, as always, if you stuck with me and this annoying timer all this time, thank you for sticking with me on my journey, and happy reading.